know who Reiko is, but I guess the game is to her. Anyway, my name is PolishLynx and welcome to 6 days of snow. Oh. Alright. So, at least at my place there's a ton of snow outside, and I had this installed and it kind of relates us. Oh yeah, why not? Let's go, let's play it. Let's see what this is exactly about. First day. It was a dark night, and the snow was falling thick and heavy beyond the windows of the car. Everything was pure white, like a saucer of milk had been appended over the earth. It looked pretty. At least it did when we observed, from within the confines of the taxi, but I felt a surge of sympathy for whoever might be outside on such a night. The snow can be unforgiving, especially on a mountain like this. Why else would there be so many stories about strange, pale-skinned women that lure unsuspecting men to their icy graves? In a remote place like this, how long would it take before anybody uncovered your corpse? A day? 2 days? A whole week? Perhaps a month. Or never. Being a writer, I couldn't help but ponder such morbid things. For I admit, crime fiction has never been my forte. It's always been my belief that there is enough unpleasantness in real life. We hardly need to fabricate anymore. Sakiko says that because I'm sentimental, apparently it's one of my better qualities. Sakiko or Sachiko? Let's go Sachiko. Sachiko says, sentiment manifests itself in my eyes. I have unusually pale eyes. My wife has quite a way with words. I sometimes think her talents are wasted as a wife and mother, when she might have an untapped acumen for storytelling. She's certainly good at gossiping with the other women who attend art classes with her every Wednesday. No offense, but aren't most women good at gossiping? And actually aren't a lot of men also good at that? I don't think there is any rule to that. Anyway, Sachiko, however, always blushes and shakes her head whenever I suggest this, even as a gentle joke. So she says she's more than happy looking after me and our 2 sons. Searching for any greater purpose in life would be presumptuous. I appreciate it, I suppose, but I wouldn't mind if she had a touch more ambition beyond preparing the perfect bowl of miso soup in the mornings. Not that Sachiko's miso soup is anything to be sneezed at. That was one of the things I was going to miss the most, I thought, as the car drove on through the night. Sachiko's miso soup. The miso soup at the Azami Inn would be perfectly fine, I'm sure, but it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be Sachiko's. This might sound awfully prosaic, but when food has been prepared by the hands of a woman who loves you, and has loved you for 25 years, it acquires special properties you can't find anywhere else. I don't know that. Anyway, maybe that's the best definition of marital bliss. Being able to enjoy breakfast together every morning with a small shared smile despite not having all that much to talk about. It's a comfortable, humdrum kind of existence, I suppose. But the further I ascended into the mountains, the more it began to slip away. With each and every mile I covered, the further away my banal life with Sachiko seemed. Soon the small details, the taste of her miso soup, the pseudo-religious watering of our much beloved bougainvilleas, and the pervading smell of soap began to slip away. I must confess, I was not awfully sorry to be saying farewell to any of it. It wasn't that I did not care for Sachiko, because I did, I still do. We had fallen into a rut, that was all. We had grown too accustomed to one another, and perhaps I was taking Sachiko and her miso soup for granted. It's hard to appreciate somebody when you see them every single day, and you recite the same pleasantries to them, and they repeat the same pleasantries back. It's too predictable. So, well, basically you just need to break out from that predictableness, if that's the word. It would be like playing shogi while being able to read your opponent's moves 5 turns in advance. Where's the fun in that? To put it another way, our daily routine had become far too familiar, to the extent that it was almost painful. I wasn't trying to run away from Sachiko, I told myself. That wasn't it. I just needed a change of pace. I wanted to remind myself how much my wife meant to me. I want to remind myself why I loved her. I was journeying away from my wife so I could learn to miss her again, which would hopefully make our eventual reunion all the more sweeter. After giving it some thought, I decided upon the perfect location wherein I could ruminate on my marriage. That would be the snow-capped mountains in Hakuba, more than half an hour away from human civilization. And I feel I need to check if the Hakuba is a thing. There will be no people at the Azam Inn to disturb my solitude, just the snow and the stars. What? Oh. Okay, so Hakuba is a village in Japan. Nagano Prefecture. Central part of the Honshu Islands. Only 9,000 people are living there? That's awesome. Oh, they have the ski jumping areas. Taylor built, okay, for the Olympics in 1998, by the way. Oh, actually, that's a pretty neat place. Alright, so I know a little bit about Hakuba now. Cool. And that was fine by me. The young boy driving the taxi cab hummed under his breath a song I did not know and tapped his fingers against the wheel. "We're almost there," he said, and turned to me and smiled. The darkness obscured much of his face, but I could see the reassuring gap-toothed grin. One of his front teeth was missing. I thought it rude to ask why, so I didn't comment, but I couldn't stop myself from fabricating stories. "How far is it now?" I asked him, hugging my trunk a little closer to my chest. Sachiko had helped me pack before my departure. I told her she needn't have bothered, but she was insistent. Despite being such a quiet, retiring woman, Sachiko can be awfully insistent about the most mundane of things. "Not too far now," said the boy, for boy might be a touch demanding, as he must have been in his early 20s, 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 5, accounting for traffic. That was probably supposed to be a joke. We hadn't passed a single car during the journey from the train station. I must admit, I was a bit relieved. The road was so poorly lit, any oncoming cars could have spelled disaster. "It's not like you need to get there in a hurry, is it?" asked the boy. "What are you doing up near Hakuba, if you don't mind me asking?" I don't mind though," I said politely. "I'm a writer. I thought going somewhere remote would help you focus, generate a few ideas, that kind of thing." "Oh, an author?" He was and sounded genuinely impressed. "Written anything I'd know?" "I doubt it. I'm not well known by any means, but I make enough to pay the bills." "Well, what more can a man ask for? I'm not too word-wise, but that sounds like a success story to me. Not many people who want to be authors make so much as a penny." "Yeah, I suppose so," I said, running my hands through my hair. "Sometimes forget I have a lot to be thankful for." "And what can things do right? Newspaper articles, journalism?" "Some poetry. And I released a novel a couple of years ago, too." "A novel, is it?" he said, and he whistled again. "Now that is fancy. I could be throwing around the next Ogai Mori." Oh, I doubt I will be ever reach such levels of fame. I just dabble, really. Well, I hope you include me in your next literary effort, Mr. Tanabe AG. Alright, Mr. Tanabe, I'll remember that. And he nodded his head determinedly, like a chicken pecking up words. That was a cruel smile. Simile. And I chastised myself for thinking such thing. I can realize that spending so much of my life inside the city, but I could be quite a snob. That was another reason I told myself why going to the countryside would be good. It was always useful to see new sights and broaden my horizons. Open my mind. The moon up ahead, shining in the apex of the sky like a pearl, split the swirling fog and snow with pale rays of light. In the dark, the moonlight looked little, ethereal. It was the kind of moon so perfectly round and full that could drive one to madness. You better include me in your next novel, Mr. Name, said the driver, with his distinct up-to smile, and I found myself thinking that maybe I would. He was the character that was easy to forget. The thief helped. I'm Hanada Yosuke. A pleasure to meet you. Oh no. The pleasure is all mine. I demurred, and the young taxi driver Yosuke tittered. Incredible. A writer saying it's a pleasure to make my acquaintance, and I thought I'd live to see the day. He sounded so bemused by the idea, I smiled. You know, if you really want something interesting to write about, for your next novel, of course, there's no better setting than the Azami Inn, said Yosuke companionably after a lull in the conversation. It's beautiful around there. Not that I have much of an eye for it. Still, all this snow and the hills and this quaint little building out in the middle of nowhere. Very pretty. Yeah, it sounds delightful. Lonely too, I think, but that should suit you down to the ground. A bit of peace and quiet helps stimulate the imagination, right? That is the general idea. All the noise in the big city can be a bit... I searched for the correct word, but I couldn't find it. Maybe it had been stolen by the snow. Oh, I can imagine, said Yusuke, sensing my discomfort. I've lived around here all my life, but still, the big city, The big city indeed. I'd love to go there once or twice just to look around, but I don't think I could ever settle somewhere like that. From what I've heard, there are too many buildings and far too many people. I like the peace and quiet, for even I'd get a bit antsy if I had to stay in the Azami Inn too long. I know how Miss Kakuchi does it. The Proprietress? The one and the same, said Yosuke with a nod. She's been living up there for gosh, I don't know how long. Maybe longer than I've been alive, because as long as there's been the Azami Inn, there's been Miss Kakuchi. She used to run it with her husband, so maybe she wasn't too long before, but he's dead now. Died years ago. I looked at Yosuke, intrigued. Ideas began to grow inside my head, just like a corn sprouting to proud oak trees. What happened to Mr. Kakuchi? I asked as casually as I could, master, but my efforts were probably in vain. I later told Yosuke I was a writer, and people never trust writers. At least they shouldn't. We crowd around misery like vultures and pick the bones clean until there's nothing left. Yosuke, who didn't seem to be the most intelligent of people, was still sharp enough, because he grinned. It was a wolfish grin, all too fitting for the large pearly moon. So interested are you, Mr. Tanabe? He asked. It isn't an interesting story. I can't help myself. And rather well known too. There are all kinds of stories about the Azami Inn, as I said. And Miss Kakuchi. Not all of them are pleasant, and I don't believe half of them, but they are very interesting. I should let you know before we continue that I don't write crime stories. Ah, well, more's the pity, said Yosuke with a shrug. When you get a pretty young woman and a dead husband, there are bound to be rumors, but the truth is a lot simpler. He was old, Mr. Kakuchi, a good 2 decades older than his wife. And you know, when you're old and you live up in the mountains, chances are you will catch a cold at some point you won't be able to fend off. So he died just like that? Just like that. Rather anticlimactic, all things considered, but people love talking. You can't stop the talking, even a place like this, Yosuke smiled. I talk enough myself. My fiancée Hatsumi always berates me. Still, she can't hate it that much, or she wouldn't have agreed to marry me. You have a fiancé? Congratulations! Yosuke thanked me, smiling sheepishly. Honestly, I feel a bit sorry for Miss Kakuchi. All things considered, she must be awfully lonely up there without a husband. and the residents of Higashikawa aren't too keen on her either. Doesn't she have anybody else? She has a daughter, little thing, Reiko. Miss Kakuchi has always been very protective, and no wonder after what happened to her husband. Reiko. I nodded my head. I would have to file this away for future reference. Doesn't she have any staff? Oh, she employs a few girls. My Hatsumi was one of them, but it's a small business. She doesn't get many customers, you see. I see, I said, and I did see. I looked out the window and I could see the hills covered in snow, with yet more snow falling, and I saw only too clearly. I couldn't imagine many people coming to the Azami, not even those who were passionate about skiing. There were places to say that were closer to the main roads, where you didn't have to hire a taxi and went your way through the mountains for over half an hour to reach your destination. If Sachiko were here, I knew what she would say. None of this was very sensible. Still, as I wasn't a sensible man, but a sensitive one, this kind of location would, as Yosuke had said, suit me down to the ground. Huh. Interesting. Very interesting. I apologize for arriving so late. My train was delayed. It's quite alright. I expect as much given all the snow. The woman I presumed was Miss Kakuchi replied. I'm happy to receive any customers, no matter how late they may arrive. Business has been slow. What do you expect? She asked with a touch of very amusement to her tone. Her voice was soft, but there was a certain bite to it, some hardness I was not able to pin down. Perhaps that of hardness was only to be expected, coming from a woman who had lived in this inn high up in the mountains for so very long. Sorry. Had she been softer, I wondered when her husband was still alive. I would never know. Well, she's wearing a yukata, so that's a freaking gigantic plus. I'm a fan of those. Now, Miss Kakuchi. How can I describe her? Words failed me at that time, and they fail me even now. I suppose if I had to put a single word to it, she was beautiful. She was, but that wasn't entirely right. She was the kind of woman who had been beautiful once, beautiful enough to drive men to destruction, but old age had tempered some of her beauty, softening the edges so it no longer had an acute piercing effect. That was a good thing, I think. Such beauty can be used as a weapon, like an arrow, but this was an arrow whose tip had been sanded smooth. Her hair was dark and glossy, cut into a neat bow reminiscent of a kokashi doll. It was an unusual choice for an older woman. She must have been in her 40s, but that only served to heighten my interest in her. Her eyes were the color of roasted tea leaves, and they were lined with thick, long lashes. When she blinked, her lashes fluttered in a beginning manner that cast shadows against her face. Her skin was pale, and though there were some wrinkles around her mouth, it was unblemished, save for two small moles no bigger than pinheads beneath her right eye. She wore a modest kimono. It's a kimono, not... Okay, kimonos are cool as well, not only yukatas. She wore a modest kimono of muted colors and stood there regally, her hands held at her front. If looked at from afar, one could have been forgiven for thinking she was 10 or 20 years younger than she really was. Well, I certainly wouldn't say she's 40. That's definitely a thing. That would be on my mind. But time waits for no man. At any rate, Miss Kakuchi didn't seem to be the kind of person who stepped herself in her own nostalgia. Everything about her, from her tone of voice to the way she stood, suggested she was far too sensible to bother with such nonsense. She wasn't sentimental. Something about her portrait almost seemed to defy sentiment. She wasn't like me. I suppose we're quite a poor match. In any event, I hope you enjoy your stay at the Asamin, said Miss Kakuchi. It was a line she must have delivered many times, and said it beautifully, like a skilled artisan might pluck a heart-rending melody from a koto. I must confess, I felt rather abashed. I had been imagining my city-born and bred houris that the folk who reside in the countryside were simpler than I somehow. I had been wrong. I am Kakuchi Kayo, she said by means of my acquaintance, for there was a certain reticence to on. It's nice to meet you. Likewise, I said, bowing my head. My name is Tanabe Eiji. Mr. Tanabe, Miss Kakuchi repeated with a small nod of her head. When she said my name commonplace for, its properties seemed to change in some curious manner. European alchemists might have striven for years to turn base metals into gold, but Miss Kakuchi had succeeded in a certain kind of thaumaturgy of her own. Well, if I need to introduce myself further, I've been running the Asamin for some 14 years, ever since the death of my husband. I'm sure Yusuke has told you about that already. He might have mentioned a thing or two, yes. You don't need to spare my feelings. I know what the people around here say. They enjoy their gossip. There's not much else to gossip about. I don't think Mr. Hanada meant anything by it. But he was just making conversation. At my expense of my dignity, I don't doubt, said Miss Kakuchi easily. For Yusuke hadn't said anything incriminating, I found myself feeling guilty, as if I had conspired against her. Let us move on from this subject, she said, not noticing my discomfort. It is unpleasant, particularly after such a long journey, now. Miss Kakuchi explained the general running of the inn to me, when meals were prepared, where the hot springs were, and who to speak to if I had a complaint, while I nodded dumbly, stunned into silence. So, she said once she had finished her short business spiel, I trust this is satisfactory. That is more than that, thank you, I said, stuttering. Why was I stuttering? Being around Miss Kakuchi, held under the steady gaze of her dark brown eyes, had the most incredible effect upon me. I felt not like a grown man with two sons, but a naughty child being scolded by my father for playing too zealously about this zelkova tree in our garden. Miss Kakuchi was probably a few years younger than I, but she regarded me archly, like one who had seen far more than I could ever imagine. I know it might sound rather harsh, but I understood immediately why the residents of the nearby village didn't like her very much. She was not a likable woman. What? I shall get Reiko to show you to your room. She may as well make herself useful, said Miss Kakuchi. With that declaration, the proprietress turned, her bobbed hair fluttering, and called out in tones that would have made an emperor bug. Reiko! Well, customer! There was a shuffling of feet as Reiko hastened down where her mother's call. I pictured her as skinny, uncomfortably so, with big eyes and lips pulled into a permanent frown, her head bent and her gait stumbling. But the Reiko who answered Miss Kakuchi's summons was rather different. My imagination had betrayed me yet again. She was rather young, that much was true. Still a teenager, I suppose, and she was slight, but not in an awkward manner. Hello. Her limbs were pale and slender, and she moved like a little ballerina. Yes? You called, mother? She looked just like Miss Kakuchi did, or had done, I imagined, before old age had seen fit to sap away her youthful charms. Reiko even had a beauty mark beneath her eye, for it was located under her left, not her right. Other than that, it was an almost perfect facsimile of her mother's, like she was some kind of copy. A homunculus child raised in a glass jar. but these thoughts were rather too fanciful. Yeah, I bet they looked almost the same. If we had them next to each other, the same age, yeah. "This is Mr. Tanabe," said Miss Kakuchi, gesturing towards me. "He has recently arrived from Tokyo. Can you take his bag and show him to his room? It's the one you were preparing on the west side." Hey, I will take the bag. "Of course," said Reiko with a small bow of her head. "I shall do it at once." She bent to pick up my bag, first brushing the sleeve of her kimono on one side when... No, that will never do." Reiko flinched at the reprimand. She was now halfway between retrieving my case and standing straight. The sleeves of her kimono were still rolled back, and I could see her arms. They were as pale as the snow that fell outside, shot through with delicate blue veins. For I could not bring myself to look away. "When you are picking up luggage, Reiko, you shouldn't let your sleeves bunch up about your elbows. It's unseemly," said Miss Kakuchi. I'm sorry." "Don't apologize," said Miss Kakuchi coolly, "for I have told you this time and time again. Try to remember next time, please." "All right." Reiko sounded so despondent any words of reassurance I might have thought to offer died on my tongue. I had already divined during these most perfunctory of greetings that her mother scolded her quite a lot. Reiko led me to my room in silence, my suitcase held in her arms. If the case was heavy for her, I did not know. She didn't slow down, and neither did she seem hampered by her burden. Her footsteps were slow and regular, like that of clockwork. Hemmed in by her kimono, she could only take short, dainty steps, right foot in front of the left, then the left in front of the right, then repeat. I followed along behind her like an attentive schoolboy. The wooden hallway was dimly lit, and I could hear the sound of the wind whistling outside. My footsteps made the floor creak ominously. I tried to think of things to say, but nothing sounded quite right. "The weather's awful around here, isn't it?" would have been too pedestrian. "You really do have beautiful eyes," would have been far too forthcoming. "Is your mother always like that?" would have been too personal. Despite having many things I want to say, I could say nothing. I don't know why, but I want to talk to this girl. Maybe it was pity because of the way she had flinched when her mother had spoken to her, and really, she must have been lonely. If Yosuke suspected Miss Kakuchi of melancholia, then what about her daughter? Reiko's hair fluttered behind her, inky black like a veil in the darkness. But for she was small, Reiko could not tarry in her march. Instead, she continued, as quiet as a mirror and just as inscrutable. Even back then, I was enamored with her. Maybe it was the romance of the situation. How could you blame me? There was something very poetic about Reiko's plight, an uncommon beauty hidden from prying eyes, lost amidst the ice and snow. After 20 seconds or so, for it seemed like longer, Reiko's footsteps stopped. She halted by a nondescript wooden door, much like the others that lined the hallway. "Your room," she said by means of explanation, not that it needed explaining. I thanked her all the same and took my case from her outstretched hands. Our fingertips brushed for less than a second. If I had been a younger boy, Kenji's age, perhaps, I fear I might have blushed. It's rather late and we don't normally serve food at this time," said Reiko, addressing the floor rather than my face. "But I'm sure the cook would be more than happy to prepare something for you. Mother said you traveled a long way." "It's alright," I replied, for it had been some 5 hours since I had last eaten. "I don't want to inconvenience you." "But you're a guest," said Reiko. This time, she did lift her head. Doesn't it give you the right to inconvenience us just a little? You're paying for the privilege. I blinked. Words, once more, were conspicuously absent. She was actually smiling. So, she did not dislike me, and neither was she afraid. She couldn't have been, to joke with me so casually, for that was what it was. A joke. I couldn't stop myself from laughing. It was a small laugh, really, but then again, Reiko's smile had been rather demure. A hearty chuckle wouldn't have suited the atmosphere, and I think she's a little more red now, and I've never been one to laugh that much. I'm too self-conscious. But Reiko made me laugh all the same. Well, you might have a point, I said. I suppose I would mind some green tea. I need a bit of warming up. I know, said Reiko with a nod of regret. It can be horribly cold around here. I hope my room has a kotatsu. Of course! We live in mountains. If we seem to not have a kotatsu, our guests might catch their death cold. She said throwing her gear for emphasis. I smiled. Well, I wouldn't want that. I don't tend to stay here that long. For the mountains were picturesque, I did not fancy extending my trip. A most unfortunate side effect of death is that it tends to render people immobile, tied to one place for the rest of their... well, not lives. I don't blame you, said Reiko seriously. I wouldn't stay here if I had the choice. Which I don't. A small sigh. Ah, well, I shouldn't say things like that. Mother would be cross with me. She'd say it was bad for business. I think that things are stacked against us already, but what do I know? You seem to be quite knowledgeable, in my humble opinion. Thank you, she said with both her head. Her hair fluttered, caught in a sudden draught of icy air. I knew it was because of the wind, but I seized by sentimentality. I can't help but imagine it was because she was so very full of life. Reiko was livelier by far than she had been before. The sudden contrast between her demure, trumpedly persona and the new one I was witnessing, witty, funny, and unabashedly charming, caught me off guard. Could the caterpillar have emerged from its chrysalis in a sound 5 seconds? But no, some transformations do not take place so rapidly, not in the real world. I wondered, did Reiko's newfound freeness have anything to do, perhaps, with the absence of her mother? Alright, I'll see about the green tea and perhaps simple bowl of rice porridge. I think you should get something in your stomach. Do I look picky? Reiko pretended to ponder, one hand beneath her chin. Perhaps a bit tired. Long train journeys do that, especially at my age. I wonder. I've never been on a train before, said Reiko. There was something wistful about her tone. Her eyes were misty and far away. She was so transparent that her thoughts flickered across the surface of her mind like ripples in a pool. But then Reiko shook her head and clapped her hands, and the illusion was over. Right, green tea, rice porridge. Please feel free to make yourself at home and discover the delights of the Azamin. Thank you for your hospitality, I said, bowing my head. I intend to. Oh, and it's very fine if you want to use the kotatsu, but make sure the fire the brazier has burned down before sleep. We wouldn't want you to start a fire. No, I said with a shake of my head. We wouldn't want that. Not at all, Reiko repeated. But I couldn't help but wonder. Inside her amber eyes, I swore I could see flickering flames. Reiko was as good as her word. She returned to my room momentarily, the green tea and rice porridge on a tray. They were both piping hot. She did not linger, for I would have liked to converse with her further, and that would have been improper. A woman should not tarry for so long in a man's private quarters, for Reiko was not a woman really so much as a girl. Reiko's kimono flattened out her figure, making it impossible to tell whether she had curves or not, but courage was apparent by the tone of her voice and the softness of her skin. Not that such details improved the situation. If anything, it made them worse. A woman in a man's room at night is improper enough, but a teenage girl? That is truly a source of scandal. Scandal in the eyes of the newspapers, but a sensationalist romance if transmuted by the hand of an author. It all depends on how you frame things. In any case, Reiko departed with that now familiar tap 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 of her wooden sandals against the tiny mats, and I was left alone. The green tea was delicious. The leaves brewed perfectly, and the rice porridge was thick and nourishing. I enjoyed the food a good deal, though not as much as Sachiko's. Sachiko knows exactly how I prefer my tea, and she can steep the leaves in perfect accordance to my preferences down to the last millisecond. Of course, Sachiko's tea would be superior. I'd been married for her for more than 20 years. It is a most curious phenomenon. However, that man, accustomed to perfection, will begin to tire of it. Is there anything more selfish than a man who cannot be satisfied? Sometimes I have to wonder. It was still snowing outside. I could see the snow in the air, falling thick and fast beyond my window. The sight of it made me feel warmer than perhaps I was, for the room was cold and seemed to bleed heat from the tatami mat. Fortunately, the kotatsu helped. Worn both inside out and tired from my journey, I turned in for the night half an hour later. I think I might have dreamt about Reiko.